So just to give you guys an idea of what we're going to be talking about today, I am going to be talking about product management. You'll hear many names of this. You'll hear project management, which is not the same, program management, product management. So we'll talk more about what those are. But really what I wanted to do is just give you a quick introduction of who I am, some leaders in the product space. We're going to define what is the role of product management, what are some responsibilities. And then I want to walk through a small little scenario, a couple tips and trips that I have for you guys for kind of working through your projects, whether you do this through, I think, Spark Dev, if you guys are doing like your own little startup type stuff, senior project, hackathons. I want to make sure that you guys are equipped with some basic skills to make you successful. Because what I've realized, so my partner is software engineering and I'm product management. And he's taught me some really valuable stuff, but it's funny because he listens in on my calls and I complain to him about things the way that they should be done a particular way and how the importance of some of the product stuff that I do. And he went ahead and he started to develop some of those skills, and he's gotten praise at work because he's not thinking about just the engineering task at hand, but how it fits into the product. And what is the customer's experience when he's building this? Is he building it for himself or is he building it for the customer? So I think that this is something that's valuable, even if you're not going to go into product management. But I also want to give you a little bit more visibility because I know when I was in college, I had no idea what this was. And then I want to go ahead and just leave you guys with some resources. This includes a project of mine, a little pet project, as well as my LinkedIn in case you guys want to connect and talk later on. And then I want to leave a lot of time. So I'm hoping that this only takes me 20, 25 minutes if I talk fast enough, and I want to leave the rest of the time for discussion. I don't love the idea of talking at people. I understand that sometimes it's beneficial to give information, but I would much prefer to spend a good portion of the time just going back and forth. There's not a lot of clarity on this role. If anyone tells you that they perfectly understand it, they're lying. That's not true unless they're very, very senior and have seen it across many, many, many industries. This role is just wildly dependent on team, industry. So I definitely want to talk to you guys about the questions you have, whether that's more clarity on the role, the differentiations, how they communicate between business and engineering. I want to talk to you guys about all that, or just questions you have about me and my experience moving away from Miami, things like that. So I'll just jump into the intro. One thing I want to say, although I only want to talk for 25 minutes, I want to leave as much as I can content-wise. So if you have questions for the discussion part, but if I say something or, a burning question comes up and you just need to get it answered, if you're fine interrupting me, feel free to just unmute and ask, else just write it in the chat. If at any point I'm going too fast, too slow, or you just can't hear me or can't see something, just again, drop it in the chat to make sure that we're all aligned. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. I talk fast and a lot, so do not hesitate to go ahead and, like I said, just interrupt me for burning questions. First thing I wanted to talk about was just my background. So I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, like many of you guys. My mom is Honduran and my dad is from the Dominican Republic, so I am a big mix. I was raised with the same background as a lot of you guys. If you guys are in FIU or still in Florida, I'm not sure if you went somewhere else for COVID, but I was really, really engaged in communities. And this is not a community. UPE was something that I was immensely a part of, but it wasn't the only community at FIU. I was really big on giving back to those less fortunate than me, upcoming youth, the other folks in my school. So like whether that was either, students that were smarter than me, that just really had their stuff together. I wanted to learn from them, but also students that were struggling. I wanted to get closer to them and I wanted to see how I could become better at helping others and how they can become better if they just ask for help. I think there's benefits from both sides. I look at everything as not expecting something. I didn't expect anything from this person except that I would grow. So I always tried to give back in that sense. I was part of hackathons. I was part of UPE. I was part of, I think it's called now like CS First, or the one where you go to the elementary schools and middle schools and you teach the kids the Scratch code. So that stuff, it's gone through so many names. So I started in FIU in 2014, so way back when. And UPE Ignite, thank you, Naomi. So UPE Ignite is what I was a part of, even before it was called CS First. It didn't even, I think it was called code. It was just code.org. We were just doing it out of free will of a professor who's awesome and is at FIU. And I also did grading assistants, TA stuff. So I was, again, just really big on giving back. I was like the nerdy little kid who just like went through every circle. I didn't believe in cliques. I tried to communicate with everyone. And I think that kind of, the reason that I'm stressing that is because I always felt this need of creating community, of networking, making sure that I understood what our student body and our community in Miami needed in order to be healthy, in order to be better off than where we were yesterday. That's something that really mattered to me. So you can kind of see that I had passions for changing. I wanted things to change, and I wanted them to change for the better. And that kind of stayed with me going forward, and I'll tell you guys about it a little bit more. So one thing to add is during college, I had a series of internships. They were all engineering. I come from an engineering background, as you can tell, CS. I did internships at, fintechs. I did Wells Fargo. I did Amazon. I did a research in AI and NLP. So I was very like all over the place, between data, SQL stuff, and then more of this like new AI popping stuff. And one thing that I learned was just that I wanted more. I wanted to make more impact, and I wanted to be able to see the impact that I was making. Every time I finished an internship, they told me, you saved this company thousands of dollars, you saved this company millions of dollars, you opened up a potential door for us to make more money. And it's like, sure, like I understand that that's big impact, but what am I doing for the world? What am I doing to make it better than it was yesterday? Or how am I helping anyone other than, rich people getting richer? What impact am I having? And I wasn't able to get that in the engineering world. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just wasn't able to grab that. So that's when I got more interested in research. And then I sidetracked myself and I let myself go into product management, and I don't regret it. And I'll tell you guys about it either in the discussion if you want to know more, or maybe I'll drop some sprinkles along this presentation. But the first thing I did after I graduated is I came right back. I came right back and I started to do recruiting events. I might have met some of you or talked to you guys. If you're from FIU, odds are I looked at your resume, told you to go fix something, go to GL, print it, and then come back. Because I definitely think that we lack a lot of resources compared to other universities. So I definitely try to help out when I can. Like I said, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to leave my contact at the end of this, but I'm really big on coming back, not forgetting where you started, and making sure that you help others that were in your position. I didn't get to where I was by networking, but I would say that my network gave me the confidence and the skill set to be successful and get to where I am. Once I graduated, I also had amazing opportunities to speak to hundreds. I'm talking about at least 100, usually closer to 500 people in conferences, virtual and in person. I have social anxiety. I have all kinds of anxiety. You'll get over it when you start talking. It doesn't ever go away at the beginning, but once you get in the flow, you're going to realize that people wouldn't show up if they didn't want to hear what you had to say. They wouldn't be there to begin with. And if they leave, it's fine. Just talk to the people that are there. They're interested and they're looking to learn. And that's one of the things I love about my job is I'm able to attend. So this is an internal conference, the one you see on the bottom left. This is the machine learning Microsoft conference. It happens a couple times a year, twice a year. There's a spring and then a winter one. And what we do is we talk about topics in machine learning. I particularly work in Azure machine learning. I work in automated machine learning. So I'll come and present usually a forecasting scenario for automated machine learning and talk to data scientists, developers, analysts all across Microsoft. And these people have years of experience on me. Way more technical, way more mathematical, everything that you can think of, higher in the leadership. Even outside of this conference, I've had talks where I've had to present to CEOs, CTOs, VPs. And what you start to realize is they're there for the content. It doesn't matter if you're junior, it doesn't matter if you're senior, they're there to see what you have to offer. And if you have a passion for teaching, if you have a passion for educating others, this is a great way of doing it without being a teacher. And it's something that I am slowly grasping because one of my passions is to go into education. So this is a great way for me to educate without having to do that. So that's kind of my background. Don't know how much more I have to say on that, but if you guys have questions, again, we can cover it in the discussion, or, if it's burning, just let me know. I just have 2 slides here because I wanted to show you guys that this product management role, even if you haven't heard of it or you don't really understand it, it's been around for a long time. much longer than we think. I used to think, because I hadn't heard of it, it must be a new role, but there's people who have been doing this for probably longer than I've been born. So longer than most of us. So I wanted to show you guys that even though what I'm showing here is diversity in tech companies, you'll find it YouTube, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Disney, Hulu, Spotify, all of these places have this product concept, this product role. It might be called program manager, product manager, technical product manager, whatever, but they all have this concept, and it plays a different role depending on every team, every industry, as I mentioned. But we're also diverse, and there's a little bit of a stereotype that, oh, okay, if you're a woman, you're not technical, go into product. It's not true. In order to be successful, you need to find an area that you're passionate about. And sometimes areas don't require as much technical skill, but a lot of areas, especially in tech companies, they do require a good technical acumen. You might not be, but you might not be writing code, but you still need to be able to read code. You still need to be able to understand the offering that you're telling customers to pay millions and billions of dollars to use. So you can't just say that you're just going to ignore all that technical stuff. So you'll find plenty of men, women from different backgrounds, ethnicities, races, all that stuff in these roles across companies, and not just as juniors, like where I am right now, where I'm only a PM2, you're going to find them as head of product. And there's that same chain that you get with software engineering 1, senior, principal, lead of product, product, from the engineering side. You'll find that same thing in PM. They kind of grow in parallel. It's one-to-one in that sense. There's some things about the product role that are a little misleading, but I think that's a conversation to have in the discussion, so I'm going to skip that. So this is actually a tweet from someone who's pretty popular in product. This is Josh Ellman. So he has experience in product, and you can see it here. He's had experience in product in LinkedIn. He's had experience in product in Twitter, as well as Robinhood, the investing app. And the reason that I pulled this tweet is because when I read it, it made me laugh. It made me go, that's a good point. And if you start to think or read this tweet and you start to think, oh, that's interesting, or yeah, I guess that it makes sense, I just hadn't thought about it, or that is a thought I've had. So when you start thinking about a product that you own or are contributing to, and you care about changing the vision of the product, how people consume it, whether or not people consume it, you need to start thinking about what the customers are thinking of and what works for a market. And that's what Josh has done in this tweet. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. So he says, imagine if everything that charges you an annual fee or a monthly fee changed the wording to subscription membership. For example, subscribe for insurance, subscribe to a premium credit card, subscribe to trash pickup. And the idea here is that we're changing the consumer's mindset from you're charging me to, oh, I'm part of something. Oh, I'm getting an elite service, right? And it's so psychological that it seems like so obvious. It's like, well, duh, that would work. And why haven't we done it? Right? And maybe there's reasons why we haven't. Maybe there's reasons why we should and shouldn't. But it kind of, if you start to ask those questions, and this is just a very small part of the way that your mind would think if you were in product. But if this, piques your curiosity, definitely look into what a product manager does, because we have to answer these tough questions. We have to understand what wording, what user interface, what experience works and would likely save your current customers and attract new ones. So I just wanted to do that. With that in place, I wanted to talk to you guys just briefly about what a product manager's responsibilities include. So quickly, I do want to point out that there are 3 main names. As I mentioned, there's a project manager, a product manager, and a program manager. Project manager, out of scope. That is something completely different. Go look it up because I don't even know. It's closer to Scrum Master from what I understand. Okay, so that leaves product manager and program manager. That's kind of in our scope. Program manager is Microsoft trying to be unique. I don't know, don't ask me. They're trying to be unique. It's a product manager. It's the same thing, no different. The biggest misconception is because of the word manager that we lead people, that we are bosses. I do not own an engineering team. I am not anyone's manager. This purely means that I own a feature. I am responsible. That feature is successful, it comes to me. If that feature is not successful, it comes to me. It means that I am responsible for how the customer interacts with it, what we ship, when we ship, that kind of stuff it falls on me. So the only thing I manage is the overall product. I don't get to choose which engineer works on what feature. I can prioritize it, but I can't say who does what. that's where you work really, really closely to an engineering lead. You guys are almost like, yeah, you're partners. I don't know how else to say it. You're one-to-one with an engineering lead. And this is why I like this role, because what happened is I was starting as just an engineer, and I wouldn't have insight into what are the customers doing? What are they using us for? But now that I'm working with that engineering lead, me and this engineering lead have to talk about what's going to work for our customers. Who are our customers today? When we talk to them, what are trends we notice? And then we start to build, right? Versus if you don't have a great product manager, sorry to say it this way, the engineers underneath will never have visibility. I try, because I've been there, to give that visibility to my engineers. Hey, by the way, that thing you built is being used by XYZ to accomplish elemental P, right? But before you build things, and all you get is a number back. Eventually your manager will come to you and be like, yeah, you did good. And you're getting a promotion because this had great impact. But what kind of impact? To what extent? Why am I building it? Before I build it, could you have told me that? So that's what I try to provide. And those are the decisions that I'm a part of. So that's usually pretty succinct across any product manager role. Now I'm going to talk about some roles and responsibilities that are the same for everyone. But again, I want to add, that's not true. There's no one definition for every product manager. These are just usually true. The first is product design. So this comes back to, again, let's say, someone says there's a big customer need, for face detection, right? Okay, so should I put out a Python SDK? Should I put out an easy to use API? Should I put out a UI? Well, I don't know. Who's your customer? Are you working towards data scientists, developers? Is it a particular customer where they're going to bring all their workflows to you, but they're all like no code? It's like, who are you working for, right? And you have to make those decisions of what does my product look like based off 1, customer feedback, 2, market knowledge, so what are competitors offering, and 3, a little bit of intuition. Not too much, because then you have bias. You start to build things for you instead of what the customer needs, but a little bit of intuition you get over time. It's not something you're born with, but after talking to enough customers, knowing what developers want versus data scientists versus analysts, you'll get a little intuition of which one is probably the best thing to do. And then you can do studies to verify that. Don't just trust your intuition. So that's a little bit of product design, tons more in there. The second one is prioritization. There's a little bit of a gap between product design and prioritization where I didn't talk about metrics, but we're going to talk about that later. But prioritization is the skill set you have, let's say you thought you're going to have 12 engineers. Management comes in saying, hey, we have to pull 8 of those engineers out to do another project, super important, government stuff, I don't know. So you're left with 4 engineers. Well, you planned a whole semester, a whole 6 months for 12 engineers, now you have 4. What do? Well, if your work was prioritized, you already know what you're going to do. You're just going to have to rescope the top 10 items to these 4 engineers, and the rest are saved for another semester. That, or you reprioritize because maybe the engineers that you're left with have a different skill set. Maybe you needed data scientists for 3 of these items, but all your data scientists got reorged. So then what do? You have to learn how to be very agile. This happens all of the time. So you have to prioritize not only on what your customers want, not only on what your product vision is, because you might be a feature of a bigger product, but also on the available resources. What makes sense for the engineering team that you're working on, or the skill set that you have. Finally is, not finally, but it's part of the same, is customer focus. This kind of I already talked about, but I'll just say it one more time. It's, again, listening to what your customers want, but not listening to what your customers ask for. I know that sounds very confusing, but what this means is you are participating in active listening. This means you are not thinking about anything else. You're listening to what your customer says. You're taking notes. You're recording calls. And when they're done, you think about it. Customer might say, oh, I want a button. I want this button because it's too hard to deploy. So maybe what you need is not necessarily a button, but the root problem is that it is difficult to deploy. Okay, why is it difficult to deploy? Let's forget about the button. Why is it difficult to deploy? Oh, you need these 2 scripts. Okay, so if we automatically, provided the scripts for you, then you'd be fine. Yeah, I guess. So you start to, it's not always what the customer's saying, hey, I need this thing, but here's my problem. And then it is up to you as a product leader, a thought leader, to go ahead and decide what's the best product design, the best product decision, the best prioritization for those needs. And then last is the strategy and vision. So, today you might pick, I don't know, some simple, we kind of talked about like, let's say you need to create like a face recognition experience. And I built some API, right? But customers that are coming in have different scenarios. I need face recognition for a security purpose. I need face recognition for more a, I don't know what else you would need it for, but for another scenario. And they're starting to come in and they're like, this is very generic. Like, it's not specific to my use case. What can we do? We can start to create templates that are specific to domains or verticals, specific to user scenarios. And that way we make it a lot easier for them to plug and play. So maybe that's your vision. You want to go from this generic platform to something a little bit more vertical driven. Those are decisions that you have to fight for. Again, you're not a manager. You don't lead engineering. You don't lead likely the whole service, but you do have the voice of your customers, and you have to, over time, build credibility with engineering and with leadership to show that there's enough impact that you can make if they trust in you and if they let you pursue that product vision. So it's always good to speak up when you start to notice that maybe the product vision could be improved. So that's kind of high level responsibilities that I think most product managers will have. There's many more that I have, but I just wanted to show you some that would be a little bit generic across anything in case you ever intern or talk to someone in product management and wanted to like kick off a conversation. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into what they do. So what I wanted to give you guys now are just some essentials, again, whether you want to go into product or not, but if you are in engineering to any capacity, I think these are really, really helpful, especially if you're ambitious. I think, oh, did I hear a question? Okay, cool. But I definitely, if you're ambitious, if you are someone who likes to get big projects done, get noticed by leadership, not necessarily with the terms, I think that this is really important. Take from it what you will, but I think hello. Sorry about that, you guys. Thank you, thank you. It was perfect. I had some boba that I haven't finished. So give me a second to. I'll start talking in a second. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. Oh, I'm so glad you're all saying yes. That means you were paying attention. That makes me so happy. Again, if you guys want me to like skip to something, just let me know. But if not, I'm going to continue where I was as soon as I'm done eating my boba. I thought it would take longer to reconnect. Yeah. So the biggest thing that I've noticed, and I've seen this unfortunately happen to colleagues that I went to college with, or even people in other companies that I've personally worked in, and that's the coding monkey effect. It's really unfortunate, but I'm sure you've heard of it, where you're not thinking of decisions. You're kind of just doing whatever someone tells you. And I'm not saying that this is the fault of a person. This is kind of what we're taught. We're taught to just, especially women, but even minorities, we're taught just do what they ask you to. Keep your head down. You know what I mean? Just be a good kid, like especially Latin parents, you know what I mean? They're like, no, don't question it, just do it. And you really have to question it with the good intentions. Ask, why are we building what we're building? Like, what's the relevance here? So let's say you want to start a little Spark Dev project or a little startup with your friends, and you guys might, especially at a hackathon scenario, you might first decide, I really want to use this cool like Clarify AI or this cool cognitive service. That's okay. Do that, right? Like learn the technologies you want. But before you start this, what are we going to build with it, right? Make sure that you define what you're trying to solve. Like if you want to do a grocery store, shopping app, right? Something like Instacart, but let's say you're being original, like an Instacart app. And you're like, yeah, I just want cool shopping experience. I have no idea what you're trying to solve. Like I could just shop, or I could just like, I don't know, like call someone, my mom, and ask her to do it. Like, I don't understand what the problem is. So you need to be really specific on what are you trying to achieve by the project you're doing. I'm trying to save people time. I'm trying to save people energy. So maybe there's someone that travels a lot, or grocery stores in their area open and close at different times. So sometimes they have to go to different grocery stores, and they end up getting super lost because they're used to, the dairy being here and the produce being here, and everything is super switched up because they're always traveling or different times. And I kind of want to make it very easy to use, where I can find everything that I need relatively fast in a collective way. And two, I want to save myself time and energy. So that's why I'm building this app. Okay, I see where you're coming from. I think it could be defined a little bit more, whatever, but at least you're trying to answer the question of what am I trying to achieve, not just what am I building, right? The next thing is to define key success metrics. This is more important, a little bit more important if you're doing something more long-term than a hackathon, but it can really help in a hackathon, because what ends up happening in a hackathon is you have 20 hours, 36 at most. I haven't seen much longer than that, but let's say you have about 36 hours. Success metrics can help you with prioritization. So what I unfortunately end up seeing is I'll see a lot of students like busting their butts trying to get a project done, and they're so excited. You just see like the first 5 to 10 hours, super excited. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna use this, I'm gonna build that. And you get to them halfway through and they get stuck on something very minuscule that maybe they didn't even really need, but they haven't built an interface. They haven't built the API format. There's no way for me to even test the product or get to the breaking point because it's broken somewhere before they've built the necessity of judges being able to use it. When you're coming to a hackathon where you need to demo something in hours, one of the first things is, okay, are we gonna have time to build whatever is needed for people to use it? Because building some database that we can access is not going to mean much if there's nothing we can do with the database. So it's kind of like, is someone working on back end and front end at the same time? How are we going to prioritize it? What if we could just get a working front end and then show them what we wanted to do with the back end? Like, this was the concept. If you're interested in learning back end, that's fine. Create a very sucky UI and then really work on your back end, or a very sucky interface, right? But you need some kind of metric to decide what is it that you want to showcase. If it's simplicity, I want this to be easy to use, spend all that time on the design, spend all that time making it usable so that they can picture what you're trying to build. If it is instead saving time, show how easy it is, show how fast you're able to do something as compared to maybe spending an hour in the grocery store. So that's when success metrics can help you tell a story, which is that next part that I'm going to talk about, but also decide, what am I going to get done? Because I only have 20 hours, right? 10 hours have already passed. What do I do now? So the last one is pitching your product. I want to talk about this a little bit more, but just make sure that you keep define the objective fresh in your mind when you start thinking about pitching. Because the worst thing I've seen when I go to judge a hackathon project is you start out with, we used this really cool stack, and we used this cool Go, or we used this really cool, up and coming language and this cool technology. Bruh, what did you build? Like, take a step back. Tell me your story. What are you trying to get done? And then we can talk about, oh, okay, so what are some technical challenges? I am interested in your technical abilities. Everyone is, but it can't be all that. Like, I'm interested in your ability to build something that matters, not just build something. So keep that in mind when you're doing your projects. I kind of already talked about this, but essentially what I'm saying for your objective is make sure you don't overcomplicate things. Try to pick up a problem that you're trying to solve and stick to it. It'll help you the whole way through. Don't make reaching assumptions. This is more for senior project, some kind of startup, something like that, where it's a longer term project. Just make sure that whatever you're building, you try to eliminate bias. Like, you might really want to build something, but the truth is there's no market that needs it, right? So you want to make sure you're building something that's backed either by data or true personal experiences. Like, you have seen people really suffer with this, and then also go do your own research and get some data on that. So again, do be clear and concise and base your objectives off workflows. So things that you see people struggling with. Maybe there's a really cool software, but it's super hard to use. So you want to create some kind of integration or layer on top of it that'll make it easier for more people to use it. You're growing the adoption of that feature. You're growing the impact on it could have on a business because now they have access to all these cool tools, etc. So make sure that you're basing it off of something either that is a workflow for a user or some kind of data. So like, 20% of people in America can't go shopping in grocery stores due to social anxiety. I don't know, something like that. So I'm going to run through really fast an experience that I've had. So this is a problem that right now, I think we're shipping it soon. So it's perfect timing that we were going through. Essentially, so again, I told you guys I work in Azure machine learning, work in automated machine learning. So I work specifically on time series forecasting. I know that doesn't sound cool, but it's so much fun. And one common scenario that we have is taking historical data. So time series just means timestamp data, so like hourly sales, right? So let's say we have hourly sales from pub subs, from Publix, and basically a data scientist comes in, they give us this historic data, and then they want a model that'll predict what the sales will be for the next month, this or the demand, right? So that way they know how much supply to get. And then they basically can host this model in the cloud, get an API, developers or data engineers can go ahead and work with that API to go ahead and get forecasts and send that over to the business or the people making these subs, whoever is decision makers, business stakeholders, and they can do whatever they want with these forecasts, these future sales predictions. So the problem is that right now we built this product to be for data scientists, right? But I just told you that these data scientists are building models for business stakeholders, for people who are actually in the shop. So how do we bridge this gap between such a technical space, a model, an AI ML model, with business people in sales? Business people in sales, they don't want to use AI and ML because they're like, we don't know what that is. We prefer Excel. We know how Excel works. Excel shows us this. It's easy to use. It graphs things. We don't know what a model is. We don't know how a model works. We don't want to know how a model works. So it's kind of understanding how can we make this or produce the results, not so much the training, I think that should stay with data scientists, but that model and the results, how can we then make it very friendly in a way that analysts and people in this finance world are used to seeing data? If we can present it in a similar way, then they're not going to see it any different than they would in Excel or any other product that they use, right? So kind of understanding that's what my customer needs. They're not asking for it. They're actually doing the opposite. Data scientists want it. Business people are like, no. So what is actually the trouble? The trouble is it's something unfamiliar. So let's make it more familiar. So I want to be able to give users the ability to visualize forecasts without coding. Even more than this, I want to give my customers the ability to share results with business stakeholders, financial analysts, without this kind of friction of technical to business. I want to make it seamless. I want to be able to make sure that anyone can understand the results. That's really what I'm trying to get at, right? Metrics should go ahead and guide my prioritization, and the metrics should be a good balance between customer satisfaction and engineering excellence. So this includes, how happy is a customer with the experience, but also can it scale? So one good example is I want to go ahead and show, like I said, sales forecast in a beautiful little visual, a graph on a computer. Right now, our offering is a web service. So what happens if a user comes in with a very short frequency, something like minute data, and they predict out the next 1,000 minutes? It's not that unreasonable. They predict out the next 1,000 minutes. That all has to load for every single pub subs type, for every single product that they sell. What happens if you're on a tablet? I don't think your computer is gonna hold up to that. You have to have a mega supercomputer, but the average person doesn't have a mega supercomputer to load that all in one place. So does it make more sense for us to build this for a big computer? Does it make more sense for us to find some way to show these visualizations in a summarized form? So what are the kind of engineering considerations that we need to have before we ship this? We don't want to ship it and then hear, hey, it doesn't work, right? You need to think about this beforehand. So the kinds of things that I would pick, and I picked many, but customer satisfaction, how happy are they with the experience? Are they able to understand it? Is there something more that they wanted to do that I didn't allow for them? Does it give them the visibility and trust in the model that they couldn't get by just seeing a model? Does it help go ahead and increase current usage? Are more people using it now because it's so much easier to explain it to the business? And does it attract new users? Because now they see this really easy flow and they're like, hey, that seems easier than what we're using now, or a potential way to explore AI without being too intimidating. Let's try it out. So these are some metrics that maybe I would pick. And then you would use those metrics to go ahead and prioritize. Again, my prioritization being a really easy to use UI. Second would be some kind of download button where they can download the results to a CSV and then go ahead and use that in their own Power BI report, do their own thing with it. That's kind of phase 2. Right now, I just want to show them a very easy to consume visual. That's what I want to go ahead and achieve. So again, when you're pitching your product, this comes to a judge comes in front of you, or you're trying to get someone to join your startup, or you're trying to get a stakeholder, someone like that. An investor is what I meant, but like a stakeholder, an investor. So the first thing is to emphasize the objective. So what are you trying to solve? Again, I had customers who were not willing to use the product end to end. So that means from data scientists all the way to business, because the business folks did not have a way to see if the data coming from the model was trustworthy, because there's no way to visualize it. We're basically giving a bunch of predictions through APIs that developers or data scientists would have to code, get into Excel, move to Power BI, and then show to the business stakeholders, which is a little bit more work than it's worth for a POC, for a proof of concept. That's something you do for a workload, right? So we wanted an easy way to present the results so that the business could have trust in AI and ML and the machine learning processes that Azure was offering. We wanted them to have an easy to consume experience and trust the model, trust everything that Azure machine learning was doing for them. The second one was the metrics that we talked about. Usually reiterate saying like, oh, you know, we predict that our app would save users. Let's say we went to Instagram, the Instacart one, you know, would save users an hour of shopping time, whatever it may be. And then your story. Again, both between your metrics and your objective, you should have a story already, right? I told you guys right now what I wanted to do is gain the trust and gain the business, the business of the business, but the business side of my customers to go ahead and trust in the product and the results, and therefore become more active and loyal users of Azure. And then finally, the last thing is impact. So once it's out, either, you know, for a startup or a hackathon project, you can't prove impact, but you can say this is the impact I expect, right? But after you do something, you might be able to hold a test and say, this is the impact that I had. I was, you know, able to grow usage by 20% due to this visualization, or I was able to save a customer from leaving because now they were able to more succinctly communicate model results to their customer or to their business side. So there's things like that can help you pitch your product to stakeholders, to judges. And then ultimately you can start about all the fun technical stuff you did. You know, you can either sprinkle it in or talk about it at the end, and it'll still land with your base. So just to reiterate the 3 kind of project essentials, this is very high level just for anyone to take with you. Make sure you define your objective. Make sure you define your key success metrics. You can have just 1 or 2 to start out. Don't feel the need to go overboard. And then finally, pitching your product as a story. You're not a robot. I don't care just about the tech. I want to know how this is making a difference in your target audience's lives. So that's what I had for the kind of essentials for the project. The next bit that I wanted to show you guys is I actually have a mentorship podcast that I hold with another alumni of FIU. She's actually a PhD student at FIU right now. And we talk about everything from time management, jumping from a large company such as Microsoft to a startup. We talk about interviewing, making good first impressions. We want to talk more about like imposter syndrome and other initiatives that more influential people have done. So I just wanted to drop the link to my podcast here. Thank you. So this is something that's a pet project for us. If you guys know of anyone or are someone who is interested in talking in a podcast and you feel like you have a great story to give back to your community, we're also more than happy to highlight students who have made great achievements in research or in cool projects. The next thing is just my LinkedIn. I get asked this a lot after these kinds. I've done these like shell hacks and panther hacks, and at the end everyone asks me, yes, it's on Spotify, has asked me for my LinkedIn, so you can either take a quick screenshot or add me. I'll go back to this at the end. I think that's what I had for content where I'm talking at you guys. I did go over my promised 20 minutes. I'm so sorry. But I did want to open the floor to just kind of questions that you guys had, either generically for me, anything I said, or how you can apply some things. Any questions?
Sabrina, I have a question for you. This is Samantha. I wanted to ask you, what's the most challenging problem you've had to solve during your time at Microsoft, and why was it important to solve?
So this is a twofold question. I'm so sorry. I really need to stop drinking this boba.
No, it's okay.
The second you guys ask, I've had two hard problems. One of them had nothing to do with the product. Very professional, I know.
No, no worries.
One of them had nothing to do with the product. It was purely as a fresh out of college student, 22 years old. How do I come into a room with a data scientist, 3 data scientists with 15 plus years of experience, a principal engineering lead, senior engineers in machine learning and AI, and tell them what I think we should work on? How do I get heard, right? Or be heard by this audience and have them trust that I'm telling them that this is the direction and that it's right? Because they don't owe me their trust, right? They don't know that I know what I'm talking about. So finding, building your credibility, right? It was really, it wasn't that I had a hard time with it. It's that I had to be very particular, right? And when I remember what I told you guys is something that I was in their shoes, and something I suffered was I just didn't have visibility. I didn't know what was going on. So what I started doing is I started getting on a bunch, like, excuse my language, but like a shit ton of customer calls. I tried to schedule at least 3 or 4 customer calls a day. That's a lot of customer calls, even if they didn't go anywhere. And I started to build an idea of what is the kind of data that customers are working with? What are some of the challenges they're facing? And I started to quote them. I started to say this exact line came from this customer. And I saw this from 5 different customers. And as I brought that to the engineering room, they were listening to me, but they didn't fully believe me. And I started to say, they still don't know me, right? And if I tell them something, they take it with a grain of salt. So I started to loop in engineers to calls with me, with customers that I felt like had a lot of feedback and it was worth it. The whole point is we save engineers from too many meetings, but I started to pull them into these like really good calls, and I led them. I led those calls, and I started to ask probing questions, get clarification. And then that's when the data scientist started to build trust in me. They're like, oh, she's asking the right questions. And look, I heard it straight from the customer's mouth. Like, maybe she was, maybe I can rely on her. Now I see it, sometimes they just have to see it to believe it. And when they build trust with you, you start to build a good morale. So whenever a data scientist or an engineer does something well, you go ahead and you praise them for it. You're like, look at the impact that you had. So in that sense, that was very difficult, and that took a long time. And I had to be very particular, and I had to build very high morale to get everyone excited to join customer calls. Then on the flip side, as far as like work, what was the technical hardest? We've gone through a lot. Let me see what the hardest thing that I've worked on was. Yeah, okay. So we have a customer that comes in and they need to train, how many is it even? Like 1.5 million models. Right now, let's say that we could even, right? Train one model that could train across their 50, what they have is 1.5 million time series. So imagine like 1.5 million products, right? And they all have sales, right? And they wanted to train across all that data. And so let's say that we could even handle creating one model that could handle all of that data. Is it the right thing to do? What if, some products are seasonal? Like they only sell in Christmas, or they're a produce, like some fruit is in season only sometimes, plants season only sometimes. So that doesn't make sense to have one model that's trained across some products that are seasonal, some products that are year round, some products that are like everyday household needs versus one-time needs. So, okay, so one model's out of the picture, but building a separate model for every product might not make sense. And let's say then, okay, we want the users to be able to group. We think that these products have similar sales, so we're going to create one model for them. These products have similar sales. And let's say that comes down to, let's just say for conversation's sake, this is 10 different categories. Or let's make it a little bit better, 100 different categories. I then expect the user to go into AutoML and train 100 models. That means 100 times they have to submit. So how do we build a easy to use experience where behind the scenes it is 100 experiments, but the user is not interacting with that? So what we did is we built a solution, we call them solution accelerators, but it's basically a Python notebook, right? But it's a template. And behind the scenes, we're using concepts like, probably won't make sense to you, but like, because it's jargon, it's pipelines and parallel run steps to go ahead and tell the user, tell me what the groups are that you want, tell me how long you want to train, tell me what you're trying, what the metric is that you're interested in. And behind the scenes, we're going to kick off in parallel hundreds up to 24 million runs for you. But what we return back to you, because you're going to have the same problem. Let's say we return back to 100 models. You're supposed to deploy 100 models. You're supposed to make sure the 100 models get retrained. You can't. So what we need to return to you then is a single model, what we call composite model, that maps to these 100 deployments. And depending on what you pass in, so if we see that, oh, this is for Persian shield plants. Okay, well, that maps to this product or this model, right? This model group. So we're going to go ahead and get that model to get forecast and sales. So you kind of have to think from ends. It's not enough to just solve the problem of kicking off 100 or 1,000,000 experiments, right? It's how does the user actually consume? How does the user train? How does the user bring this into production? Can it scale? What kinds of problems are we trying to solve? It's not just, oh, how do I unblock them from this? What is their end-to-end story? What are they trying to achieve? And can I tell that whole story? Sorry, it's so long, but that it was very complex and there was more problems as we went through it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. The last part of the question was actually, and why was it important? So, yeah.
I think it speaks for itself, but I'll give you an example, right? Right now, they're using Excel sheets, like for real, like most of finance are using Excel sheets. And I'm actually going to give you a slightly different one because I felt this customer used this solution later on. It was, yes, I can say their names. I was making sure that they were public. So Little Caesars Pizzas, listen, I mean, I can't say this. They're not my favorite pizza, but they're a great customer to work with. And they have a hot and ready line, you know, like those pizzas that are under the shelf lamp, you can just grab them, go, okay. So they have a shelf life of about 20 minutes. And if they don't sell, that's waste for the environment, that's waste for them as in monetary. But from a company's perspective, I'd rather have waste than have a customer walk in and not get a product, because that's lost sales. So by using these Excel sheets, they were using like Excel sheets and like some, you can call it a model, but it's just a little bit of statistics, right? They were using like a stats model. And their waste was pretty bad and their supply demand was pretty bad. They had a lot of lost sales. When they finished using this many models accelerator, I won't go through the details, they finished using it, were able to build models for the proper groupings. It was mainly by state. They saw that I think it was a 25% reduction in rate and a 15% increase in accuracy. So they were able to meet more sales and reduce their waste, which is awesome. That's awesome for the environment. That's awesome for the customer because they're able to improve sales. Like, I'm all for that. You know what I mean? I'm able to help a company be more successful, but also help their impact on the planet. And I thought that was beautiful, you know, but we also work with energy. Those are not public, but we work with like energy companies. We work with retail, we work with finance, and like across different areas. Like even the retail folks are not necessarily working on how's my product going to sell. They're working on how do we make it easier to get employees to the right places, making sure that we don't have too many employees in one place and they're never growing, you know, like workforce optimization, that's what we call it. So there's lots of cool impact.
I was going to say thank you for answering that question. You did a really great job. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne.
Hey, Sabrina.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Danny. I wanted to ask you, so earlier you mentioned machine learning in education, and that's kind of like your goal, right? So I was wondering, where do you think is there some exciting progress happening right now with machine learning in education?
Oh, that's cool. You know what? I personally have not done enough to get into like machine learning and education as a whole. Like, what is machine learning doing for the education field? What I was trying to say is that I've had the luxury of going to AI and ML conferences because it's such like a hot topic right now to teach them about my product. I will say, I don't know what its impact is on education, but I will say that I think that personally, the space of AI that I'm most intrigued by right now is like the NLP space, so the natural language processing space. I think that they're doing a lot of really cool stuff in, you know, homeland security, in education, in, you know, online bullying prevention, things like that. So I think if I had to spend, you know, 1 hour Googling stuff, I'd probably spend it looking deeper into natural language processing.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope that answers. Yeah, sorry, I should do better.
No, that was actually a good answer. Thank you.
I have another question. I was gonna ask, like, what advice would you have for someone who's aspiring to become like a PM, and it could be any company in general, like a product manager?
I think I don't have advice for a product manager. I only have advice for ambitious people. And I know that sounds annoying or obnoxious, whatever, but like, I don't think there's, for interviewing and for getting into a company, I don't think there's anything that's unique versus an engineering position. The biggest difference is you technically need to have a little bit better social skills. That's about it. You know, like you need some base social skills, otherwise it's not gonna end well because it's a lot of communication. But I would say my biggest thing is like, do your research. You know, like when you're in an interview, the difference between you and someone that the manager takes a lot of interest in is you spent a little bit of time, just 15 minutes, looking at the job posting and dissecting some of the words. So let's say, you know, the job posting says, we're a team and we're modernizing the stack for this cool service. That's vague. I don't know what that means. But if I go into an interview and I'm like, I just wanted to learn about what you guys did. I'm just interested. Hey, at least you ask them what they're interested in. Elevate yourself. You mentioned on your job posting that you are trying to modernize the stack for this financial service. Can you tell me more about what kind of technology you're trying to include or what you mean by modernizing? Awesome, we're trying to go from a monolithic legacy code base to microservices. Oh, cool, microservices. Can you talk more about that? And you start to get them excited. They're like, man, you paid attention. You did your homework and you showed up. And again, this is not for product management. This is for anybody going in. Something that I did. I'll give you an example. I didn't know anything about product management. The manager said, like, what do you know about product management? Like, what do you think a product manager is? And I told him, look, I'm going to be honest. I didn't know anything. And I went to, says my internet connection is unstable. So if I disconnect, but I went to Grace Hopper and I went to like, I don't know, like 12 different company stands. And I asked them, do you guys have a product manager role in your company? And they're like, yeah, or no, whatever. And then I asked them, can you tell me about what are the responsibilities or what you do at your company? And I wrote notes, like afterwards, I'm not in front of them. I listened to them and afterwards I wrote some notes. And, you know, when I went to my interview at Microsoft, that was the only place I interviewed for this role. So that's the only one I cared about, just being honest. And when he asked me, like, what do I think a product manager does? I told him I went to 12 plus companies. I asked them this question and I got a lot. You know, I got that they do a lot. Everyone is different. Depending on the company, they might be doing, you know, more project management, which is that kind of a scrum master role. They could be defining timelines, roadmaps, doing product design, UX, UI. They could be doing everything. And what I realized is it kind of just depends on what the product needs. And he was like, yeah, pretty much. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, it looks like you know everything that I know. So like, I think we're done here. And that was it. And then I got hired. You know what I mean? Like it was a short interview, but the truth was that he wanted to see how much curiosity I had. You know, he gave me a coding question. I really think he could have not cared less on like how I actually answered it, but he just asked me about 4 times, is there another way? Is there another way? Because something that's really important, I think in all of engineering, but I guess in product management, is that you're not stuck on one way. You don't get attached to, this is the way, this is my baby, I have to do it this way. But what if that doesn't work? Do you have ideas? Are you gonna try? Are you gonna get stuck? Or are you gonna push past that and see if there's another solution? So I think being ambitious, showing up like you guys are here, you know what I mean? Taking that extra step, do your homework a little bit to see if there's something that you can ask that would really impress them and show them that you're interested. And then I think the second one shows the same thing, right? I did my homework. I asked a bunch of people what PMs were, so I was ready in case they asked me like, do you know what you're signing up for? Right? So I think that's the only advice I have. I don't think there's anything else that you would need specific to product management.
Thank you. That was a great response.
You're welcome. I got one question because you said that this is UPE design. Oh, I got one question from a kid from FSU, I think it was, and he asked me what the difference between a user research, like a user researcher is, and a PM, because I told you guys that one of our jobs is to ask customers, well, do you like this? Are you happy with this? Does anyone else know, care, anything of that sort? I don't know if you guys have interest. I want to know what your interests are. Like, let's say you want to be a designer. Well, how does a designer like collaborate with a PM? You said you were working on Figma. Why are you working on Figma, not your designer? Like, no questions like that? I see nodding, but you're muted.
I'm confused, sorry, because I was like, I thought you were making a statement. I didn't know you were asking a question.
No worries. Yeah, I think it is a question that I've heard, questions that I've heard. I'm just wondering where people's curiosity is. Like, what do you guys want to know more about?
Oh, so the reason why I asked that, is that what you're asking me? is because, well, I'm interested in PM in general, and I realize that I don't like coding all day. And I think that like I'd rather be the person like defining how the product would look like instead of getting the deliverables to make the product. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I wanted to have a like hand in like shaping what the product would look like and the experience and the workflows and all those things. So that's like basically like why I'm asking you that question.
Yeah, so I mean, I would definitely look at it and see if you're interested in what it'll look like in a experience way, then definitely look into design work. I work with designers closely. If you're a little bit more interested in where the product is gonna go, because a lot of products don't even have a UI, you know, so like definitely if you're, as long as you're okay with not being part, or you could be a UI PM. UI PMs do
It
a
could
lot of
be
stuff.
like I'm open to anything as long as it's in Microsoft. I'm fine.
We'll see you.
Yeah, that's where we're getting there.
Mhm. Good luck. Anything else?
Hello. Hi. So actually, I had a few questions because I know you had mentioned you had gone through different internships beforehand, and you just randomly ended up in just product management. So what exactly were you doing before, and why'd you end up here? And do you plan on staying in this, or do you plan on building up to something different?
Those are such good questions. Good
Thank
job.
you.
So yes, I right before, how do I say this? So I did my Amazon internship right after I did my Wells Fargo internship. And what both of those taught me was what I was telling you guys, that I just didn't see the impact. I didn't really know what I'm sure I had some impact, but I didn't have visibility into it. So what I decided was I wasn't going to go into industry. I decided I was going to get my master's and I was going to do research. So for about a year, starting in college, my last 6 months of college, and a few months after I graduated, I did research for, what is it called? IHMC, Institute of Human and Machine Cognition. It's a Florida research center. It's more in like Ocala. It's higher up, but I worked remote because I was in university. And I did 2 projects. I did one in the NLP space, which is why I think NLP is so exciting and interesting. I'm biased. But I did some security work with NLP and helping organizations like NASA protect against fraudulent activity, because they're government officials. We don't want them to get hacked or anything. And then I did an AI ML project that I'm not gonna lie, that just don't care about. It happens, you know, I was an intern, I had to do whatever they told me. So I did that. I liked one project, I hated the other. And in that time between, like right in between my internship, I went to Grace Hopper. And I went to Grace Hopper purely to listen to the talks. I was just really interested in like, what's new and popping in AI? Can I apply this to my research? And I had always kind of had a sweet spot for Microsoft, because every time they came to FIU, I always connected with the people from there. They were so willing to like talk to me. They were so willing to like it was short mentorship. Like they would just tell me like, hey, this is what I recommend, or this is good on your resume, but you know what would be better? But this is what I'm working on. This is what the community is like. Versus other people are just like, X company is great, like the top quality. And it's like, but like, show it to me. Show me the top quality. Don't talk about it, you know? And so I decided out of like a whim that I would do the on-site interview. They have interviews like in Grace Hopper. I did that one, and I knew I didn't want to work in engineering. I knew, because I told you, like for an industry. So I was like, let me just try the PM one. Like, who knows, right? So I just did it out of like, who cares? You know, like YOLO. So I did it out of like YOLO. Of course, I
like
had
that.
a soft spot for the company. I had a soft spot for the company, but I did it really out of like a whim. So I go, and that's the only one I applied to. Everything else, I was just like listening to conferences and talking to people about what it was before I applied. Like I got curious, I asked around, and then I did it, because why not? And that's when I got called on site, and I had a really good connection with the interviewers. Like the interviewers started to ask me questions like, hey, tell me about a project that you did at a hackathon. Told them about one that I did. And they were like, okay, now let's say that you want to turn this into a startup. What are the phases that you would go through? How would you get funding? What would you do first? What are some, you know, they started to ask me these cool, like, oh, wow, I never thought about creating a whole product out of this. It was just a project that I did to learn technical skills. And that really sold me. That one interview, it got me really curious on like what I could do in this space, because I was starting to think of building a product. And so I you know what, I told myself I could always get my master's later. like there's nothing is stopping me, but like this opportunity might just come once, because once I get really deep into research, I'm not sure I can come into product. I don't know if it'd be relevant for me to come into product management. In hindsight, sure, I could have, but in the moment I didn't know. So I took it and I love it. Yeah, I'm really happy, to be honest. I think I still want to get my master's. I do really, really, like I told you, have a soft spot for like the NLP space. I'm really curious in getting a little bit more technical in that, because in FIU, they drop you off at a certain point. They're like, here's some basic coding skills. That's why you're gonna need to know. And you never apply it. So I do see myself going to get my master's. I do see myself retiring and being professor because I like education. I think I'm gonna be a PM for a long time.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, really long answer, but yeah, there you go.
In terms of the interviews and things like that, did you study any sort of concepts or anything, or it was just kind of off a whim? Like you just answered it and they liked it?
Well, I remember I had a lot of internships, so I studied my ass off. Yeah. Because when they interview you, they don't interview you for PM. What they do is they give you a generic interview, the same that they would for engineering and PM, because Microsoft, especially for new grads, they like you to be technical. So, like I had to study all the binary tree, I had to study all the dynamic programming stuff that everyone else did. It's not like it was easy or whatever because you're PM. It's just different when you get on site. But everything before that, like the screening, is the same. What I did is so for Grace Hopper, to give you insight, that's just the screening. So they do like a 1 hour-ish interview with you, and it'll be slightly behavioral, but barely, if I'm being honest. And then they ask you a coding question. I would say medium, very medium. I don't think you'll get hard, easy or medium. What I got was medium. And then they'll ask you a product design question. Kind of like, they basically asked me, it doesn't matter. They asked me some product design question. And then they called me back like in a couple of days and they were like, we want you on site. So I had 3 days to prep. I bought the Cracking the PM interview book, like the Cracking the Code one. It's orange instead. It's floating around. I give it to some UPE student. Yeah. So I gave it to some student, but I want it back. But yeah, the book, I basically, on the whole flight there and a couple of days before, I just went through as many pages as I could. But what I did is I did like 5 pages from each section and then tried to do more that way to make sure I got coverage. There was not a particular question that helped that I can think of. The only thing I remember liking is making sure that you know what's outdated because that book is a little antiquated. And I answered a question not as well as I could have because of some antiquated content. It was kind of like, how do you get, user feedback? And I said, oh, you could just like ask users, like you gather users and you ask them. And it's like, you think that's the interviewer literally, he was my boss later, so we're fine. But he asked me, he's like, you really think that's what Google does when they change their little headings? Like how Google has like a different art. You think they ask their users before they change it? And I was like, I guess not. I guess they just change it and see how it goes. And he's like, exactly. They change it and see how many clicks it gets. They change it and then see what it is. And then they'll go back and say, oh, these things were really popular. These weren't. Let's do more of these. And I was like, duh, But so there's some stuff that be careful just studying versus what I told you guys, trusting your intuition.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nothing special.
So much. You've been great. We appreciate you, by the way.
Thank you.
Helping us with this.
My pleasure. I don't know if Kim, you wanted to do the little quiz thing?
All right. Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions though? I don't want to stop anybody from speak now or forever be silent. No? Okay.
Sabrina, real quick. Sorry.
Daniel.
I wanted to ask if you happen to be in the UPE Discord.
I am. I'm not super active, but I am in it. Yes.
Okay, awesome. I just wanted to see so I could message you later, possibly. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And let me go back to it. Feel free to also add me on LinkedIn if that's easy too. But yes, you can
I already
also
did that. I got you, fam.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Actual last call.
Oh yeah, one more thing. No, I'm kidding.
Jokesters.
Every day, man, every day. Do you have the slides right after the discussion one?
I can put the slides if that's how you want to do the questions. You want to do it that way?
Yeah, because I didn't want to, because the members didn't want to look at it beforehand. They're like, no, we want to go in.
Ah, you guys want to play too? Got it. I can shut this way, but let me. Well, this started on this page. Cool. So there's 3 questions that I put together. I think maybe not all of them, but I think I gave a pretty good idea of all of these. So the idea is, I don't know if Kim, you want to say that the prizes and stuff, or like the role.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so the first 3 to 5 people, I'm going to say 5, just to make it fair. The first 5 people who type the answers in chat and who get them right will have an opportunity to have a group mentorship with Sabrina here. So if you paid attention, I'm so glad. If you didn't, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah.
There's a trick question that maybe I didn't fully answer, but just try your best, regardless, add me on LinkedIn. But yeah, I do mentorship. I do closed circles on finance. I do promotion. I do internships. So happy to do group circles with anything. I'll read through these questions really fast. The first one is a true or false question. All product managers engage firsthand with customers. The second, true or false, is that product managers do not write code. And the last one is, which of the following is not in scope for a typical product manager? So, the first one is defining future roadmap for product, delivering demos and pitches for interested parties, driving the market strategy, and helping debug issues from engaged customers. So those are the 3 questions.
I see you, Danny. First one in the chat.
I haven't read them. I'm waiting.
Do we have more than one try?
Do we have more than one try? I'm gonna say no. That's like when there's a survey, and you have the ability to go back and change your mind after you see what everyone else does.
Gotta ask to make sure. You never know.
I appreciate you asking. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
Someone let me know when you're all done, because it'll be easier that way.
I think everyone's done. Oh wait, never mind.
See some coming in, yeah. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 by 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think there's still a couple of people missing. Being wrong is part of the fun, by the way. So guessing is okay.
All right, we're gonna give people 1 more minute.
I'm impressed by some of you. I would have gotten this wrong.
Oh, also, could I ask another quick question?
You may, of course. I'm taking myself out.
So I know you had mentioned that you have sort of different anxieties in terms of, or at least you used to, when it comes to
I do.
competition. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to tell until you mentioned that. But during your interviews and things like that, were they able to see through that? Were they able to tell that you had those sort of things? Because honestly, until you mentioned it, I had no idea. I'll be honest.
So half and half. I would say 50-50. Because what ends up happening is I'm pretty comfortable, because I know you guys are all students. You know what I mean? Like, I can relate to you guys. But if I'm really nervous, I talk really, really, really fast. And especially older or people of a different nationality than me, or that their English isn't their first language, have a hard time with me. So it's really hard to just get along with someone that you don't understand, you know? So there's been times that I've just suffered, but I am very, very lucky that I am well-spoken. So I can kind of bullshit my way through anything. Just being honest, it's a skill. It's a talent, but I have seen a lot of people that are very talented, unfortunately.
Amen to that.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I've seen a lot of people who are very talented, but unfortunately suffer from very extreme anxiety. Like, I mean, like they can't write on a board because they're anxious. And I think that communicating that with your recruiters is going to be helpful. But if it's just minor anxiety, definitely people can see past that 100%. And what I recommend is, if you have really bad anxiety, get internships, get them right now, because internships are a little easier to get past anxiety because they know you're a student. And then you'll get a full-time, 90% of the time, you're going to get a full-time offer from anywhere you internship from. You would have to bomb it. Like, I mean, do something that offended them to not get a full-time offer, and that way you can get like experience to that company and then switch, and you're gonna have a resume that speaks for itself. Whether you're anxious or not, you have proof that you're able to perform. So that's my recommendation if you have crippling anxiety.
No, again, I know, I was just genuinely curious because I would have not known at all that you suffered from that till you had mentioned
oh yeah. I do.
Thank you again.
I like that, Naomi. Yeah, remote interviews do help with this, especially writing code in the like code.io thingies. That helps a lot. Yeah, unfortunately, the only thing I don't like about remote is not everyone has to turn on not everyone turns on their cameras, which I get, but it loses out from people who have a really good like aura. You know, sometimes if let's say you're between two people and one person is technically perfect, but the other person was just like so easy to talk to, you guys were vibing, you can imagine they have technical skills, but maybe this person was a little bit better. Sometimes me picturing you as my coworker and as a partner, someone I can work with, will outdo technical abilities. Because if I can work with you well, that's so much more valuable. We can teach you the technical. Don't worry, girl. You know, like we got you. But teaching social skills, teaching how to just be a good teammate, how to be approachable, that's not as teachable. So that's the only bad part with remote, in my opinion. All right, I'm just gonna go through this and then we can see who got them. So the first one I saw mostly, oh, it doesn't, let me do it from here. I saw mostly false. There were some trues. All product managers engage firsthand with customers. Nope. There's a lot of product managers at Facebook. I don't know how many of you get contacted by product managers, but I don't. You know, there's a lot of product managers for code that's built for, oh my God, why am I forgetting the word? Like like dev tools, for like dev tools, right? And that's, depends what you consider a customer, I guess. You know, if you can consider other people inside your company as customers, then I guess you're building for other customers. But there's some cases where you're not building for a person, you're building for a service. You're building for something that has so many customers that it doesn't make sense for you to reach out to them. So no, not all product managers get firsthand experience with customers. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Any questions there? Comments? Product managers do not write code. Absolutely, they do, and they can, and absolutely they don't, and they can't. It depends. And like I said, this role varies so much from one company to another. There are some where they will not hire you unless you know how to code in the specific language that they need you to, because you're working on a debugging tool. You're working on something very specific to a developer, and you need a developer persona, and you need to create sample notebooks or sample material that requires you leveraging the tool to build templates, leveraging the tool to create demos, whatever it may be. So you can code. Some will code production level code, usually internally, and some will, and like this is something I do, I code to produce demos and templates that are used by customers to accelerate their workflows. So I don't code for production. I don't touch that code base. I only touch the code base for customers to leverage the product. So there's coding from both ends. It just depends who you are. And then I know plenty and a majority of PMs that will not touch code. They're like, get away from it. They won't touch it. So it really depends on your team, on your, your level of comfort There's PMs on my own team that won't touch code. Questions, comments? And the last one, and this is the one that I think I would have gotten wrong, but I saw a lot of you getting it right, which is awesome. So I want to explain it because the answers that I saw were C and D. So I'm going to start with why D isn't the right answer. And I kind of just told you, right? But so to give you a little bit of insight, what I own predominantly is an SDK tool. So that means that most of the people I'm working with are machine learning engineers or data scientists. And most of the time, the problem that they have is it's not working. I'm getting some error. So we spend an hour on a call where they're sending me their logs, they're sending me their run IDs, and I'm going ahead and looking into our query, seeing what's wrong, telling them to change, import statements, or, the way that they passed in certain parameters doesn't work, and we're getting hands-on with code. So it is my job to make sure that big, large customers and engaged customers, anything they need, I am hands-on. I'm in a more technical space, which is why I need to do this. Not all PMs will do this, but a typical program manager will have to do anything for a very engaged customer, including debugging. What we do not do is marketing strategy. Like, I don't care. But what we do, and I wrote it here is, while it's hard to define what every product manager's role is, marketing strategy is usually driven by an MPM. This is a marketing product manager or program manager here at Microsoft. These are likely engineers or other product managers who transitioned because they wanted to get a little bit more on the business side rather than the engineering side. And they work closely with PMs to gather marketing material. So what this means is, I built this cool new visualization. Here's the pros and cons. Here's the kind of people that would use it. I give that to my marketing person. They put out ads. They put out a cool blog. They figure out like what unit in Microsoft they want to send that to so that they can advertise it internally. I don't worry about that. I built what I wanted to advertise in terms of this is the product's value prop. I don't care how you market it. That's beyond me, outside of my scope. So again, we provide some material, but what goes out to the market and how it goes out to the market is completely driven by an MPM. Any questions or comments on that one? I like the little eyes for the dramatic effect. So I don't know. I definitely know quite a few of you got it right. So it should be FFD. Sorry, FFC, my bad. I love the TGC. Whoever said that one, you get props.
I like this, Danny.
Bro, I was pushing so hard to be first, and then I messed up 2 letters. I'm so upset.
So Kim, I don't know if you want to just send me the information for the, I think you said top 5?
Yeah, so top 5 after carefully going through the chat. So top 5 people who got it right. So we have Samantha, we have Mohammed Qureshi, Kayling Wong, Justice Stevenson, and Camila Kamidova, who successfully typed the right answers in the first 5. Yeah.
So, Kay, you and I know each other pretty well. Do you want to be part of this, or do you want to give this off to someone else and you and I can sync whenever you want? Just because you and I know each other. Did she answer?
Yeah, she did.
She said, I don't mind. So do we want to go give to the next person? Because Kay, she can message me or call me anytime, and I would feel like I'm being blessed. I'm like, oh my God, Kay wants to talk to me. So that's not fair for So whoever was next, if you know who you are and you want to write your name, feel free. Or if Kim, you want to go to the person. I'm sorry, I know you were doing all that work.
Shout out to Kay, I love you.
Who doesn't? She's awesome.
Yeah, so the person right after Camila, it was Nicholas D'Souza. Nick? You comprende? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. We got it. Okay, yeah,
He's
awesome.
there.
So hopefully I can, so Kim, can I rely on you to get like emails or something from these
Yeah,
folks?
so
Or
guys, they can DM me their emails, and then I'll DM you the list and be like, hey, these are the peeps.
Okay, when you say DM, is that like a Zoom DM or like how they UPE?
No, an email. Oh no, they could they
Oh,
could
okay.
DM me like on Discord or on email or whatever.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. Yeah, I was like, listen, I'm an old lady. Yeah, I need a lot of details. Let me stop sharing. How do I even stop sharing? Okay, stop here.